To put the panel onto the base and the top, I'm going to use dowels. These are loose at the moment, and I want to show you how I've fitted them, because it's quite a useful way of working. These will be glued in, and you buy them specially with little ridges in here that lets the glue come out when you push them in. So what you do is you line up your piece like this, and down the centre of where that's going to go, along here, you can draw a line, divide it into 3, and then you use a special jig. Well, I call it a jig, but you have, with this dowel, you'll buy it as a kit, with that dowel will come this proper size, a correct size drill bit. And you would drill this into your piece of wood like so. And a trick that I have is a little square piece of wood that's truly square. And when I drill, I hold that like that, and so I'm going straight in. So you don't need a drill press, you can just use something like that. So this drill has a little collar that gives you the right depth. And then here's a really clever bit, I think, is you have a little like pin that fits in each of these holes that you've drilled, like so. Then you go back and line up your wood again, press down, and you have marked corresponding points in the bottom here, and these in turn you can drill. So I did that both ends, so I've got a top and a bottom. Again, these are quite loose. And I'm going to finish all this now, sand it up before I do anything with it. And then when I come to glue it up, I will in fact tap these in with the glue, and with that I will clamp it together. I won't just push it, I will make sure that it's a really nice fit. And if all goes well, you should have a nice strong dowel fit. So that's how I'm going to fit the top to the bottom. I've decided that I'm going to paint the background of this dragonfly in a sort of pond green colour, and I'm going to use milk paints. I'll put a link and some thoughts below and in the download, but milk paints are really good because they can polish up and look a little bit like enamel, and that's very much the sort of tile quality that arts and crafts and art deco sculpture has and furniture has. Anyway, so what I've done is I've done various sort of samples first of all. I think this is very important. So it's not just the colours, but it's also oiling or whatever finish you're going to put on as well. And this is the colour I eventually like, a sort of pond green colour. So I've mixed this up into this jar here. What I need to do is just be putting it on very, very carefully with a paintbrush. And it will take several coats, but I'll start over here and I'll sort of just float it into the carving like so. This is a flat brush, so it has a sort of like a chisel edge, and you can just sort of float it in there like that to the actual edge of the carving. So very carefully work my way around. I've switched to a smaller brush for the details, like round here. I've made the paint a little bit thin so that it works up to the edge more easily. And I don't know if you can see, but over here it's going grey. That's the change of colour that happens when it dries out. And what I'll do is when I've finished here, I'll let that all dry out, go that grey colour, and then I'll start putting on more coats. I'm going to have to turn this around a little bit. Yeah. So I don't know how many coats it'll need, but it might need 3 or 4, but I will build that up because that's really how milk paints seem to work best when they're put on fairly thickly, and then you'll see we'll do a sort of polishing. I've put 4 coats of milk paint on the background here, and we're going to let that go really dry. I've decided to colour the numbers black. I like that to go with the black base. So I'm using an acrylic paint. This one's just processed black. And I don't need to primer it at all. Very carefully, just put that up. I'm going to try and come right to the edge, but I don't want to go too much onto the surface if I can avoid it, but I'll be able to sand that back when I can. So I'm going to do all the letters, these numbers black. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to paint the hands of the clock. These will paint quite well. You see, they'll need a couple of coats, so, but we can paint those as well. So I'm going to do the numbers and the hands. Rather than paint the base at the top, what I'm going to do is use my Ebonising technique, which is a mixture of vinegar and wire wool dissolved together. And on oak, I think you'll see this miraculous sort of effect of how it turns the wood this black blue colour. So I'm going to put that on the base and the top, probably several coats, make sure it really goes in. Let's put that one out. Let's just do this one for now. I think this is rather wonderful effect. Rather smelly, but that goes when we finish it with wax or oil or whatever we're going to do. You can see that's really looking quite amazing, and you can see the grain of the wood coming through. Here is the base and the top after the ebonising. I've finished it off with some very fine wire wool, and that's ready now for gluing in and finishing off with some oil finish. So that's good, that's done. Here are my black hands for the clock, they're looking good. With the actual carving itself, there's the letters. I've used a very fine sandpaper on that there, just to cut back to the edge, so they're looking good. And then we're left with the dragonfly. You can see that I've cut in the feet, so I've cut through the paint here, so I've got the legs back again. Now, can you see that there's this a lighter patch here and a darker patch around there? This light patch is the original paint. I put four coats on there, so it's quite thick. And then what I've done is I've got a wire wool, fine wire wool, and if you can see what's going to happen, I'm going to polish that with this wool, and you can see that the whole surface polishes. There's a lot of elbow grease to go into this, but eventually you see that comes up. Now, this wire wool puts off a lot of dust, so do wear a face mask and vacuum up the dust. Don't blow it around. The other thing I would say is that we want to work this wire wool right into all these junctions here, and to some extent you can get your nail in there and sort of get in there like that, But what you can do is make a little piece of wood like this, like a substitute finger, and you can make it push right into that corner, or in places like this you can get the wire wool into there or into here. So that's the thing. So when I finish this bit, then that's finished. So that's polishing up nicely, and what you get is this sort of enamel look, which is really quite special, and that colour will change when we put oil on it. And so when that's all polished up, the numbers are done, the hands are done, the top and the bottom are done, we're ready to put this all back together. It's best to put a little bit of wood glue, any sort of interior wood glue, into the actual hole here rather than on the dowel. Put a big dollop in there. Move that around. And the dowels might need tapping in with a hammer, or they might just push in depending on how that hole's gone. Yep, so that'll be enough. There's no pressure on this joint, it's just holding the one thing against the other. There's a dollop in there. Okay, so that is that bit. So now we have to put glue into these holes. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this. And then we'll assemble this. So this will go in here. And this will go, make sure that's the right way around on top there. And then I suggest, I think it's a really good idea to clamp the whole thing up using some sash clamps. So we make sure that the two parts are really together well. There you go, that's tightly bound up. Now if there's any squeeze out, there's a tiny little bit there. I just use this wet rag to pull that off. And that's it, and we'll let that go off, and then we can do some finishing. Here we are out of the clamps. You can see there's the back, there's the front. What I'm going to do now is finish the wood, and in fact all over it, with this mixture of refined linseed oil, very nice linseed oil, and 10% turpentine. So that's a mixture that just thins the oil. I'm going to put it on with a little rag. I would say that when you use linseed oil, it does spontaneously combust. So you must take these rags when they're finished outside away from the house, the workshop or whatever, dispose of them in some sort of metal container or burn them. So don't keep those lying about the workshop. Okay, so let's see what happens when we put this oil on. So let's put a bit on here and see what happens. You can see that the colour's going darker. Nice. Now to make sure that goes into these corners, I will get a little brush and just make sure that goes in there. Like that and in here. So it's just a thin coat, doesn't need very much. There's the wood coming up. That looks very nice. You can see that colour change. And that is coming down here. And then this, you see I'll do last. You see the colour? Some of that black coming off. So I'm going to do that last with a new rag. So I'll just use a fresh one on that. But you can see that's really brought some of that out. So that's what I'm going to do now. Just get a little bit of this and work my way over all the carving. So I haven't oiled the bottom because that's going to sit on some piece of furniture. But that's it. That's our Art Deco stroke arts and crafts clock. All that remains now is to fit the clock mechanism from the back and the hands here, and that'll be all finished.